Welcome to the Performance Code, the official podcast of PCodeNation.com and the Performance Code community. Tune in each week as top performers and fitness experts share their tactics and strategies to get you on the fast track to achieving maximum results. And now, your host, Justin Scollard.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Justin Scollard, episode number 13 of the Performance Code podcast. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. You got a lot of options out there when it comes to listening to podcasts, fitness podcasts, and entertainment in general. And I want to thank you so much for tuning in to this one. So today, kind of an interesting episode. I had a coaching call with a guy from the UK named Steve. So shout out to Steve if he's listening. And basically, he took me up on my offer for a free coaching call, and he told me what he was going through, what he's struggling with. And we just spent a half an hour discussing how to optimize his strategy. Now, he was already on the right track. He had a good idea of the type of foods he was going to be eating, the frequency. He had a really good training schedule. He was just off by a little bit. And so we were able to hone in on exactly how to optimize his experience to get the results that he was looking for. So I thought that this would be a good opportunity to use his scenario as sort of a case study. And so what I'm going to do today is just talk about what Steve was going through and see if maybe you guys can extrapolate from that and figure some ways to help yourselves out with this information. So here is Steve. Steve is 23 years old. He's 176 pounds, and he wants to put on some muscle and lose some body fat. Now, he's already a pretty fit guy. He just wants to see his abs. So he doesn't have far to go, but he was hitting a little bit of a roadblock. And so, of course, the first thing I ask him is what his diet is like. And this is what he was telling me. Essentially, he eats 5 eggs in the morning, 2 bananas. Then he works out. Then he has 2 more bananas. Then he has around 200 grams of chicken. Then he has a fillet of salmon, a can of tuna, and some vegetables. At first glance, you're thinking, pretty healthy diet, not bad at all, right? But what you start to see here is he's training pretty frequently. I think Steve said he was training about 3 or 4 times a week. And what we're finding is that he just wasn't eating enough carbohydrates. So if you recall back on episode 10 called Is Low Carb Ruining Your Life, I broke down some basic parameters on what your daily carbohydrate intake should look like. And even low carb, people tend to overestimate how many carbs that actually is. So if 25% of your if 25% of your calories are coming from carbohydrates in your day, that's still relatively low. But a lot of people interpret low carb as no carb, and that's just unwise, and it can have some repercussions and ramifications, especially if you're training at a high level. You want to make sure that your body's being fueled. So what I discovered right away with Steve is that he's eating a ton of fat. He's getting about 3,000 calories a day. He's eating over 200 grams of fat per day, but he's only getting about 80 grams, 60 to 80 grams of carbohydrates per day, but yet he's training at a pretty high level. So the first thing we did was break it down into that 25% of his daily caloric intake coming from carbohydrates. We honed in on what carbohydrates are going to work best for him. He's very privy on gluten. He doesn't want to have any inflammatory foods. So we've limited the carbohydrates to fruits, some sweet potatoes, quinoa, those type of carbohydrates that are a little bit lower on the glycemic index and have a much higher nutritional value in general. So then we said, okay, well, what's 25% of 3,000? Because that was our target number, and we came to 190 grams of carbohydrates per day. We said, okay, your protein intake's pretty good. He's already eating about 190 grams of protein per day. And then we said to fill in the gap now to get us to that 3,000 number, he needed to have about 160 grams of fat per day. What we did is we broke that down into 5 meals per day. So each meal looks like 40 grams of carbohydrates, 40 grams of protein, and 33 grams of fat. Now, here's the thing. Because Steve's goal is to lose body fat while maintaining, if not building muscle, definitely increasing strength, we want to incorporate some carbohydrate cycling. So what we decided to do was, keeping with that 3,000 calorie a day target, on the days that he trains, he's going to eat the diet that I had just mentioned, 190 grams of carbs, 190 grams of protein, and 166 grams of fat. Those are training days because he's going to be exerting himself. Carbohydrates are a tool to facilitate performance. Therefore, on the days that he exerts himself, he's going to have more carbohydrates. So on non-training days, there's no reason for him to be consuming 200 grams of carbohydrates, given his goals of wanting to lean out a little bit. So on non-training days he's just hanging around, he's going to eat 100 grams of carbohydrates, 190 grams of protein, and he's going to bump his fats up from 160 to 200 so that he's still hitting that 3,000 calorie target, but he's getting it more from fat on his non-training days, and then on the days that he trains, he's going to be getting it from carbohydrates. So if that at all sounds familiar to some of you out there, I think that he represents what a lot of us are struggling with as far as wrapping our mind around what's healthy, what's not, how much, how little. So in general, we want to be getting around 25% of our daily calories from carbohydrates, and the carbohydrates that are approved, again, fruits, sweet potatoes, grains such as oats, quinoa, rice. And the last thing we're going to be doing is going for bread, white flour in general, pasta, sweets, that sort of thing. Now, if anyone else out there is interested in getting that free coaching call, the offer is still on the table. I cannot guarantee how much longer it will be available. As I get busier, I will be offering less and less of these free coaching calls. But while they last, you might as well take advantage of it. I also want to remind you guys that I have a book published now. That's right. The Performance Code is more than just a podcast. There's also an accompanying book called The Performance Code. I spent the last 15 months writing it. I just published it about 2 weeks ago. You can find it on Amazon. If you just go to Amazon and search The Performance Code book, it'll pop up. There's a Kindle version and a print version, and I'm currently working on an audio version for Audible. So guys, go ahead and take advantage of it. pcodenation.com. You can actually read the first chapter for free, 100% on me. And while you're there, book a free phone call with me. Hop into the free strength course, which is called the Lean Muscle Course now, actually. Take advantage of the resources available to you, and I am happy to help. That's it for today, guys. Short and sweet. I will talk to you next week for another great episode. Justin Scollard, over and out.
Thanks so much for listening to The Performance Code, the official podcast of pcodenation.com, with your host, Justin Scollard, online at pcodenation.com. We'll catch you next time.